Hi, this is Ian Wright, and this is part 9 of this kind of 10-part introductory series to meditation, where I'm just kind of exploring some kind of basic ideas, tricks, and ways in towards having some sort of practice, some kind of meditative practice, which I think everyone should have, a way of kind of restoring ourselves to ourselves every day. If we don't do that, I think it just makes life harder. And I've done previous podcasts on all of the potential health rewards and other important kind of things that we can gain from having a practice. But actually, one of the biggest and most important ones, I think, is a bit of peace of mind. But today, I'm going to explore something a little different. And this is to do with reattuning. This is what I would call reattuning our senses to our health, or our potential to health. And I have a couple of chapters on this in my book called The Dynamics of Stillness, which was out in October. And it's available everywhere, I think. And I actually would talk about this a little bit more in my next book, which is called The Anxiety Breaks, which is coming out in 2020. When actually in that, I look at very specifically where we place our attention. And actually, in the Anxiety Breaks book, I look at actually placing our attention in terms of visual memory or thoughts, specific contemplations which can access specific parts of the brain, which can act as a brake on an anxiety response. Anyway, that's a whole other area, and it's very specific and precise, but we'll come to some of that another time. I wanted to do something a little bit more generalized here. And I think it's really important, and I think it's one of the things I think that we have lost touch with as people personally and as a society. And a lot of it is to do with our orientation in society, the way our healthcare systems have been organized, and our own personal perceptions. And what we have a tendency to do when we're getting a feeling sense of ourselves, how do we feel? We tend to attune ourselves to what feels sore, painful, blocked, unhappy, irritable, agitated, just what doesn't feel right. So we attune our attention to what doesn't feel nice. Now, the problem is, of course, is when we attune our attention to a part of ourselves that doesn't feel nice, what we focus on can accentuate it. What you look at, it's like looking on with highlights, and it highlights it, and it can kind of almost, in the way we perceive things in our nervous systems, accentuate the feeling of being blocked. Now, what I'm proposing is learning to actively shift our attention to something else, to shift our attention within our bodies, when we're aware of our bodies, to our health, or the potency or the potential for health in ourselves. This can be perceived as a feeling of aliveness or potency somewhere in our tissues, or softness or fluidity. It seems to have a kind of fluid, light, soft quality of health. And it's a feeling sense. And if when we do this as a meditation, I'll kind of guide you into how to attune yourself to this. And the amazing thing about this is when we attune ourselves to this aliveness, that feeling grows. So in a way, we're reattuning our senses. Now, this practice comes from a practice that I teach in osteopathy, where we're teaching the treatment and management of children, often in the Daisy Clinic, which I run, which is a charity clinic in Ireland, where we treat children who have complex special needs. And I teach osteopaths, or we teach osteopaths, how to work with pediatrics in osteopathy. And it's been running for a long time now. It's been running for 10 years. And one of the first things that we teach osteopaths, because osteopaths, when they come out of college, when they're first studying, they're very attuned to picking up what's wrong with people. Now, the problem is when you've got a child that has complex special needs, if you start tuning into and feeling what feels wrong with them, there's an awful lot. And it can literally lock the child up. It can actually make them feel worse because you're tuning into what's blocked. It's no good. So what we have to do, first of all, is reattune our attentional awareness to what feels or has the potential for health. So we follow the health. We realign ourselves to the potential for health. And as a treatment maxim, we follow how is the potency for health expressing itself in that moment, and how is that having an effect on the lesion fields or what's wrong. And that is a base principle for what we do. Now, if we turn that concept to ourselves, so moment to moment, we can be... I do this a lot, actually, when we're working with people who are in chronic, difficult pain. If you have to, in order to manage chronic pain, this is with people who have, are quite sick, could have, say, secondary bone issues or chronic pain syndromes of various kinds. It's a really hard thing to do, but if you can manage to do it, and I've done a series of podcasts back, and you'll find them on the Dynamics of Stillness website, about managing chronic pain, and where I cover this in much more depth. And they're worth looking at, actually, if you have pain, because there are a lot of techniques in there which can be helpful, I think. But to find this something that feels quiet, something that feels soft, behind or in a different location to the pain, say, or you could change that to anxiety. You can find somewhere that in you, or in your feeling thinking world, which is peaceful or still or quiet, or if we're depressed, we can look for something that has the quality of light in our sensorium. And all these are specific techniques which I've covered before somewhat, and I will cover again in the future. But the base principle is key here, which is attuning ourselves to this potency, this aliveness, this potential for health. And what we focus on grows. It's as simple as that. So, look, this is an introduction. Let's have a go at this and see if we can find this. And it's a really important principle for living, actually. And actually, if you reattune yourselves to find the potential for health in yourselves, it can actually start on a journey towards a process of self-healing. So just sit quietly and tune into something that feels soft or quiet in your breathing. And as you tune into that, what happens is, as we know, you either, your mind does a million things, or you get feelings. And some of those feelings can be feelings of, oh, my back's a bit sore, or I'm feeling a bit stiff here, or those are the blocks. So let's reattune our attention away from the blocks and bring your awareness just gently into your body and find some part of you that has a feeling of aliveness. Now, I can feel it in my fingertips for some reason right now. But if you can't, just focus on an area, any area you like, and with your kind of feeling sense, you can find this somewhere in where you're focusing. Say you're focusing on your shoulder. Somewhere in that shoulder, there is something that feels alive. And it can be everybody can feel this. Even if you're completely in very severe pain or severe anxiety, you can feel this because it's always there. But it could be like a couple of cells. It could be tiny. This feeling, it's like a feeling of aliveness and light. It's almost got a light quality, a soft quality, an alive quality. And it's always there. So if you can't see it at the beginning, just almost in your mind's eye, magnify. It's like you use a magnifying glass and you'll see it. It can be on a tiny little level. And just keep your awareness on the motion. There's motion in it. A delicate, fluid, alive motion. It's like a potency or a potential energy which is in your body. And that is your health. That is an expression of your health in the moment. And just allow your senses or your feeling sense to follow this, or keep an attention or awareness on this sense of aliveness. And as you do that, see what happens to it. The first thing is it feels nice. And it tends to grow. That feeling of aliveness can start expanding, or it can either expand where it is, or it moves, it jumps. This kind of potency jumps to another place in your body, or your attention moves somewhere else. And you can feel, it's funny, what you can feel sometimes, things releasing a little bit, just a little softening, a little bit of opening of the tissues in a local area, whatever area of your body, it doesn't matter. And that can move to somewhere else. It can jump pretty fast, or it can move very slowly. And as you watch it, your breath can connect with that feeling. And as you keep your attention on that kind of light quality, that feeling of lightness tends to become more global. This feeling of fluidity or fluency. And even in areas which are blocked, if you feel something, even if it's a pinprick of fluency in that area, or aliveness in it, it starts to soften that feeling of blocking. But your attention has to stay not on the block, but on the fluidity, on the aliveness. And it takes a little bit of concentration because we're very naturally attuned to blocks. If we reattune to sweet vibrancy, potency in our tissues, it's a change in perception, but it's a really important one. And what can happen is that feeling of potency or aliveness can shift around by itself to the various little bits of the body, or it can spread in slow wave forms. All of it feels good, and it softens things. And as it kind of settles, it can get a little quiet and a little still. And it can feel like a still point, like a point where everything just feels still and quiet in your body. And everything kind of breathes naturally by itself. And it feels nice. And it kind of feels like everything's kind of realigning through that. And then when it's done, your attention is naturally finished and it moves somewhere else. Or you come kind of back to your senses, to the external world. And that process, it's like giving yourself a little treatment almost. It's done. Anyway, I hope you enjoy that technique. I think that technique can be very helpful, and you can expand that into areas where there's real pain or in real anxiety, of which I've covered actually techniques for both anxiety and chronic pain, if you look them up. I wish you well.